Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 34 for January 27, 2017. Hey, everybody. Daniel Rubino joined again by Zach Bowden for another semi-exciting Windows Central podcast. In a lot of ways, it's been kind of a slow week, and yet there's still plenty of stuff to talk about. So this week, we're going to be talking about Windows 10 Game Mode, which was one of the big announcements, and it just went live as we started recording this for those on the Insider program. We'll also be talking about the new Xbox previews, a lot of changes going on there as well. Briefly talk about Microsoft layoffs as that continues, and I guess we'll work in some of their earnings stuff, although we're not economists, so don't expect super deep analysis. They made money. And then there's also going to be a little bit on the MacBook Pro and iPhone. Now you may be wondering why we're going to talk about that, and that's simple. Zach's going to talk about his experience in using the iPhone and the Microsoft ecosystem on it, and I'm going to talk about putting Windows 10 on the new MacBook Pro and whether or not it's worth it and how it works and that whole experience, as I'll have a video coming up this week for that. How are you doing, Zach?
I'm not too bad. I'm just kind of stressing out right now because Microsoft kind of waited to publish this build at the exact same time that we start this show. So I am quickly reading through the changelog so we can talk about it as it's first on our agenda today. I was expecting it to come out at 10 a.m. Redmond time, but it didn't. So
yeah, they used to do this 1 p.m. thing, and now they kind of don't.
Well, they were trolling me today on purpose, I think. But yeah, build 15,019 has finally released. It was supposed to come out earlier in the week per what Xbox PR told us, but the Windows team were like, hang on a minute, there's a problem. However, they have gone ahead and released this build regardless of the issues that they were having internally with it, and they do say this in the first paragraph of the announcement post. They say this build does have some platform-related bugs that will impact the ability to play popular games on your PC. These platform bugs are unrelated to the new gaming features such as game mode. We recognize this is painful for those wanting to try out new gaming features announced this week. We deliberated a lot on whether to release this build to insiders with these issues. However, we decided to go ahead and release it as we need feedback from insiders on other areas of the OS. In other words, the Xbox PR team pushed them into a corner because they promised a build this week, so they had to put something out. Regardless, the build is here. And here's what's new. Big news for Beam users. For those of you listening on Beam now, I'm sure you're all fans of Beam. Built-in Beam streaming is finally here. So Windows Insiders can now stream a game directly from Windows 10 without needing to install XSplit or any other OBS or whatnot to stream to Beam. You can now just use the built-in streaming capabilities through the Xbox app. So Beam is the easiest and quickest way to stream gameplay. It's part of our Insider Preview build starting today for both Windows 10 PC and Xbox One. After updating to this build, you can start Beam Broadcast by pulling up the game bar by pressing the Windows key and G. So if you are using the Universal Windows platform and playing Universal Windows games on Windows 10, you probably already know about that. There's also a new games section in settings. So basically, you can customize a few Xbox-related settings within the settings app now. A few people on Twitter, some insiders have said this kind of doesn't make sense, and the icon doesn't look at home in the settings app. It would make sense to have all the Xbox-related stuff in the Xbox app, because not everybody using Windows 10 is a gamer.
Yeah, but that Xbox app is kind of messy.
Yeah, that's true. But regardless, the gaming area is now in the settings app, and this allows you to customize things such as the game bar, game DVR, game mode, and broadcasting. So if you're into all that, that's a nice new area for you there.
Now, you should also make sure you don't bring up the game bar while you're browsing in private session, right, in Edge.
Why? What happens?
Well, couldn't you can use the game bar to record anything.
Can. Yeah.
So in theory, could you use it to stream anything too?
Well, I haven't tried it.
That's what I'm saying. If you're using your in private, that's a subtle hint, by the way.
Yeah, no, I got that. Yeah, I guess you could, unless they've coded it so it only works within gaming windows, which is possible. Right. I haven't tried it yet, so once I try it, I will be able to confirm that. Anyway, moving on. Game mode is also new in this build, so we've actually spoken about game mode a few times in the past, but it's now finally here and working in this build. So with game mode, it's our goal to make Windows 10 the best Windows ever for gaming. Our vision is that game mode optimizes your Windows 10 PC for an improvement in game performance. To enable game mode, you go into setting, gaming, game mode, toggle the feature on. Doing this will give you the ability to enable the feature for each Windows platform game and Windows 32 title you play by pulling up the game bar and clicking the settings button. There you'll be able to opt individual games into using game mode. And apparently there's a known issue, which I'll see in a minute. Then there's also more games support Game Bar now, which is nice. Moving on to non-game related things, Microsoft Edge can now read aloud. So if you're somebody who likes to be read to, Edge could do that. This is more of an accessibility feature, of course, but it's here in this build now, which is fantastic. Emojis have been updated. Some of them, Microsoft Edge will now display full color updated emoji by default on websites that use emoji. So if you're a big emoji user, that's fantastic news.
They still need a way for me to bring up. I don't know how else to explain this. Like, you can't, like, say you're in Twitter on Windows 10. How do you insert emoji?
You use the on-screen keyboard, as far as I'm aware.
But not every PC has that option.
You can right-click taskbar and enable touch keyboard.
That is not at all.
That's a terrible. I know it's a terrible way.
We need a touch bar.
Every PC needs a touch bar. Moving on to the out-of-box experience, Microsoft announced a few builds ago now that there was a new out-of-box experience coming, and in this build they've added to that. So there's now a new privacy area, so that allows you to more, thoroughly customize privacy settings in Windows 10. Microsoft did announce this recently, so it is finally showing up now. Then there's also Wi-Fi Captive Portal. The Wi-Fi connectivity experience in the out-of-box experience has been updated to support Captive Portal Wi-Fi networks, which is great, whatever that is. Microsoft sign-in, sign-up. So the sign-in and sign-up flows in out-of-box experience are now updated to the new design for the Windows 10 Creators Update. Windows Hello enrollment. Users can now enroll into Windows Hello using the new design implementation.
You're just going to read the whole changelog?
I'm going to read all the most noteworthy ones.
Okay.
And then updated voice. The auto track in this build is recorded by voice actors, so it is much more friendly and sounds. I assume that means they use Jen Taylor, because if it's Cortana, unless they're not using Cortana anymore, I don't know. But yeah, that's that for the out-of-box experience. Blue light is now night light. They've changed the name of it. That's disgusting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, blue light was not very intuitive. It was like, it doesn't turn my PC blue.
That's true, actually. And that's it. But there are some known issues that they're very keen on people taking note of. So if you check the Windows blog out, you can see all of that. But yeah, it's actually quite a big update. For gamers, apparently there's a lot of gaming issues in this build. So popular games may experience crashes or black screens when trying to load the platform. Some elements in desktop Win32 games, the game will be minimized and cannot be saved. Lots of issues, so I suggest you read up the blog before you download this build. But yeah, very exciting. I would say this might be one of the last big releases for the Creators Update, because we're pretty much done with development at this point. Because we are
I don't know about that. I mean, I guess I know what you're saying in terms of actual features, but we still have a long way to go. We're not expecting this to be released till mid-April, so we still have February, March.
Right, but usually they sign off at least a few weeks before they ship it. So.
Sure, yeah, so mid-March.
And then they usually take a couple months to fix bugs, because they do sign off quite early. So not sign off. They do like feature complete quite early. So I mean, I'm expecting less huge. I'm not saying that there won't be any more features show up between now and April, but I'm expecting less from here onwards. Especially considering now People Power isn't coming, which was like the most exciting thing arriving in the anniversary update. But yeah, that's the new build. Lots of exciting things, I would say. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think game mode is a really impressive feature. It's not something that we had talked a lot about or heard a lot about, and it kind of just came out of nowhere. Jez was breaking that news, I know, a few weeks ago about it, and it's a really smart feature. It's not, conceptually, it's pretty basic. What it does, of course, is it shuts down resources on the computer so that your CPU is more dedicated for the game, and the goal there is to improve frame rates. Now, if you're running like a Razer Blade or Razer Blade Pro, you're probably not going to see too much of an improvement because those are just brute force systems. But on something like the Surface Book and Surface Pro 4, where resources are limited, you definitely do not want extraneous things running in the background. And I think this was like a kind of a cool idea that and developers don't even really need to do much for this. It's apparently going to be enabled automatically, and that's what they're kind of testing now to see the compatibility with it, especially for games going forward. And it's a nice consumer feature, this idea. And this course carries over to Xbox too. It will apparently be part of that system, or already is. It's kind of how Xbox operates, because Xbox is such a weird system. It runs 3 operating systems at once. So when you actually go into a game, though, it's not running all the other stuff for the menus and stuff. So they kind of brought some, I guess, that technology or idea over for Windows 10. And, we talk about this all the time, right? That all these operating systems are about, if you think of like Venn diagrams with overlapping circles, that's how these operating systems are. And what they're doing is pushing those circles together so there's more and more overlap, which then reduces their development time and they can roll out features across these systems. So I'm pretty excited about that. Of course, I have to go try it, see how well it works, and whether or not we actually notice a difference. I right now have fastering on one of my Surface Books, and what's kind of cool is I can swap the bases with them. Although Mark is borrowing my performance-based version, but I'm really kind of curious about gaming on there. I have to admit the latest fast builds have been pretty rough on my Surface Book. Specifically, I open it up and turn it on, and sometimes I can't, like, nothing responds on the screen, and it's been kind of frustrating to use. So I haven't actually been using it too much. So definitely not at the point, that I recommend you go buy or download this if you're ready to. We'll probably be able to recommend this towards the end of February, beginning of March. I think it'll start to really clean up and be a lot more stable. But we have a lot of builds, I think, left before we get there.
Yeah, it's very exciting indeed. More good news for gamers, in fact. There was also an Xbox Insider Preview build released this week, which was officially the first Redstone 2 build for Xbox to be pushed out to testers. So build 15,009, I believe, was sent out to gamers in the Xbox Insider Preview. That includes a revamped guide, Cortana, and much more. So this is basically in line with what we're seeing in today's release for PC. It has game mode, I believe, or at least game mode is coming along with beam streaming. It also has a slightly redesigned dashboard where the actual hero image of the game takes up most of the dashboard UI now, which looks a lot better in my opinion. There's also a much faster guide, so instead of double tapping the guide to pull out the sort of friends list and achievements from the left of the screen, it's now one click like it is on Xbox 360, and it in theory comes out instantly. I haven't been able to try it yet because Microsoft didn't actually add any of us into the inside this week. But
I was going to say I haven't tried this yet because of the limited access to it, but it is supposed to be really, really fast now. This addresses probably the biggest complaint about Xbox and its UI and operating system, which is it's kind of slow and clunky. It's a little bit better. It gets a little bit better with the One S, which has a tad bit more CPU, but it's still just sluggish. And this apparently really does a lot to help with that. And so I'm really curious. Snap mode to me never felt natural. I never used it. It was just weird. It was not intuitive. I don't think it was. I got the idea. I wanted to like it. I think a lot of people, like myself too, would see like that split screen stuff and be like, oh, yeah, I can kind of. I use it for the NFL app, which actually worked pretty well. You can be watching games and still have the NFL app snapped at like a third and get scores for other games and clips and stuff. And that was actually really kind of cool, but it was never used well, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Now, I'm mostly excited about the guide being a lot faster because I've said this many times. The Xbox dashboard is a dog when it comes to performance, and if you even compare it side by side, inviting somebody to a game on Xbox 360 is a million times faster than it is on Xbox One with the current public release of the dashboard. Hopefully, once I get to try it, I'll be able to confirm. But hopefully, these improvements make it almost identical to the Xbox 360 speeds. I don't think it's going to be exactly like the Xbox 360 speeds, but because the Xbox One's OS is much more advanced in many ways. But I am hoping it's close.
I do like how they have now sub menus sort of within the card. Because you home cards, where like so when you have Hulu, I just whistled a little there. When you have the Hulu card, you'll have the Hulu name. Of course, you can click it and launch the app, but then it also has like 3 squares next to it. Usually promoted items, shows that you recently watched, things that are recommended, and if you click those, they're shortcuts and they go right to it. And it's actually been really smart. I watch Hulu a lot, and one of my shows had a new episode and had it on there. I was able to click, and it just launched the app and went right to the episode. I think that's a real smart use of that UI, right? Because what they found out was like, why had that long like Hulu square and then just like this sort of blank spot with it? you can put like advertising kind of in there, but why not make them shortcuts and cut down the time? So I think they're starting to, and I'm seeing that stuff get more populated, like for games now, right? It goes right to the game hub for that game, and they'll put announcements there and stuff. So it's, I think, a smarter use of the space, and I kind of really like the changes. Now, these changes that we're witnessing and that are coming to Xbox One, it's going to be really interesting because they're not huge and yet they're kind of significant. But we also have heard that for Scorpio, this is going to get overhauled again. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a drastic change, but there will be some even more UI changes coming with Scorpio. So that's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. Microsoft also announced a bunch of rings for the upcoming to the Xbox Insider Preview. I don't have the list with me, but there's 4 rings, which is confusing to say the least. Why can't they just have one Insider program format for all of the Insider programs? Because the Windows one has 3 rings.
Yeah, well, I mean, Xbox updates are not fast. And for gamers, it's kind of a huge inconvenience, depending how you have your Xbox set up. If you turn it on, it's like, oh, there's an update. And like you basically just said, I'm not going to be able to use this Xbox for about 20 minutes while it does this thing. And so I get for gamers, that's not something you want to force on them. And that really fast ring, I think they were saying they could get like 3 updates a week, 3 or 4 updates a week.
During a major development of an upcoming, like the Threats update, for example, there could be 2 or 3 updates a week. But outside of that, it wouldn't be as often because
you could disrupt a lot of marriages that way. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah,
the wife comes home, turns on the Xbox, just wants to watch Hulu, and the thing's got an update. It's going to drive people nuts. It's going to get a lot of husbands in trouble.
That's true.
Just won't understand. I guess the biggest issue we have, of course, is that the Windows 10 Insider program is open, right? So if you want to go fast ring, you just enroll in the Insider program, jump on fast, good luck. Xbox is taking a different approach. I'm not necessarily against this idea, and I kind of get it, but it is different. They basically, you have to qualify for their fast rings. And to do that, it's based on the feedback. So they're really making you work to get this update. And it seems a little unfair compared to how Windows does it, which is, like I said, open enrollment, where this one, it's like, oh, what's your score? What have you contributed to this? And it's not hard. I really do like the new Insider Hub that they have for Xbox. I think it looks really nice. And I told them that because I took the survey to give them feedback. But, so it's not hard. And I actually think it's smart. But it is frustrating because none of us have really been doing the feedback,
right?
And now we kind of want to get the update, and we kind of can't.
It's funny. I did a Twitter poll this week that asked, as a Windows insider, why are you in the program? You have to only pick one. And apart from people replying, I want both. The actual result was most of insiders are only in the program because they want to get new features early. And the options in the poll were simply to provide feedback or to get new features early. And I think it was like 80 or 90% of the votes were towards getting new features. It just says a lot about the actual program and all the people in the program, and which is why you're hearing a lot more outcry from the gamers on the Xbox Insider program, because not everybody's submitting feedback. Microsoft getting plenty of feedback through telemetry anyway, but they're not getting. Right. But a lot of insiders aren't actually writing issues and actually manually submitting their own feedback. And it's the same on Xbox, which is why a lot more people are like, oh, hey, well, I wanted to have the updates early, but obviously now they have to wait because they're not submitting feedback.
And that's the important difference. The telemetry stuff they do collect for free, so if things crash, you have to restart, they do get that data without, I don't want to say without your consent, you gave consent for it. So it's not like it's being useless, but I agree. I mean, I don't give as much feedback as I would like to, but that's partly because my job is sort of living in this stuff 24/7. And, when I work in it, I don't really want to go pick up my computer and, start writing more. I do on occasion, especially on mobile, I'll try to submit bugs when I find them. But yeah, it does start to feel like a second job after a while. And that's fine. How else are you going to get feedback? You have to do kind of carrot stick, to get people to do this. Otherwise, and developers deal with this all the time. They open a beta up, Fitbit's about to do this, right? Open up a beta for their Windows 10 app so they get GAT Bluetooth support. Now, I bet the numbers are going to be the same there. I bet 80% of the people are going to sign up because they just want notifications early on their, Fitbit watch with their Windows phone. And only probably like 5 or 10% will actually submit useful feedback.
Right.
So that's those are numbers devs have to deal with. That's not ideal. You have to basically say, okay, I gotta get like 500 people to sign up for this because I'm only going to get maybe like 80 will actually give me something useful out of it.
No, yeah, I mean, to Microsoft, it's probably heartbreaking because they're like, oh, look, we have like 9 million insiders and only
Right.
100,000 submit feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just like it's voting samples, right? It's just like that where if you only get 500 people to give you feedback, you got to go off of that or use it, but you can't necessarily be like, this is an overwhelming argument, right? That like these 500 people out of, 10 million said they want this feature. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, and this is, I think, where we get into, the feedback request stuff for new features where people are like, we put it in the feedback hub. It's got 200 upvotes.
Right.
Okay. Like 200 people agree with you. That's fantastic. I'm not sure that's overwhelming support for a feature, even comparatively to the other things, because that's all it is, right? It's like, well, that one got 200, this one had 190. So clearly that's a feature everybody wants. It's not really clear, And I think this is why Microsoft doesn't necessarily go, drops everything and goes, we got to go do this right now. These 200 people voted
Right.
for this thing.
No, yeah.
Now, and that's a call to insiders that, you guys need to go in there and actually vote for this stuff and submit feedback. And the higher the numbers they get 10,000 people voting on something, I think then that gives them a stronger argument that this is a feature that people want. This is something we should prioritize. It's a tough thing.
And even then, you got to think 10,000 people, even outside the program, when there's millions and millions and millions of people using Windows, 10,000 people upvoting a single thing doesn't necessarily make it top priority for Microsoft because you've got to realize insiders aren't exactly the same as user type
Normal
as
users,
normal people.
right.
So a lot of insiders were basically diehard Windows fans at the very early part of the program, and all they wanted was Aero to come back. And those were very popular suggestions in the feedback hubs. I saw like some of them reaching 10,000, 12,000 votes. Yet we still don't have Aero back, and that's Microsoft will obviously make decisions internally whether they're, even if it's a popular feedback request, if it doesn't fit with what they're planning, then it's not something they will work on. They'll obviously say they would consider it, like they have been saying so with Aero for a long time. But since it doesn't fit with their portfolio right now, there's no point in them bringing it back. So stuff like that happens all the time, and I'm just worried that the Xbox way of doing rings comes to the insider program because that makes it more difficult for me to get bills early.
Yeah, that's our one request that media get exception, and
Yeah.
Xbox team has been good about this in the past. I've gotten builds
Mm.
early through PR, and they just so that happens. But this time they're having a little bit a tougher time because it's a new system, and so they have to figure that out. So yeah, as long as we can get early access, like I don't care. I just want to point out someone in comments, Rosna, if I'm pronouncing that right,
Yes.
actually points out that how he says he's making a joke that about 200 votes. He's like, not even make Cortana available in X, specifically their country, gets that many votes,
Right.
which is kind of sad, right? I mean, this is the thing that we deal with this in democracy all the time, right? 50% of the people vote and the other 50 don't, and then they complain about who's in office and nothing gets done. It's like you have to actually go out and do a little work, people. And so if you do sign up for the Insider program, you should, this is what you should do. You should tell Cortana to set a reminder that once a week you take 30 minutes out to just do feedback. That's it. And she'll remind you, and you just set a time to do it. And I think we should all do that for New Year's resolution about the Insider team.
Yeah, we should all set ourselves a goal. Set 5 pieces of feedback every week. Send straight to Microsoft, and we'll all be better people in the long run. Moving on to some less exciting news. More layoffs at Microsoft. Now, I believe this week Microsoft laid off 700 people, including Brian Roper, which, for those of you who don't know, was Microsoft's kind of dedicated demoer of software for a little while when Joe Belfiore was away doing his travels. So, yeah, he was the guy who was doing all the Windows 10 demos. Like, oh yeah, here's Continuum, here's the new Windows 10 feature.
We made a shirt with him.
Yes, he was the Like a Boss guy, which was pretty cool. And he was laid off along with 699 other people, which was upsetting to see. But it does raise the question: who will be replacing Brian as Microsoft's dedicated demoer? Because Microsoft do demos. Obviously, every keynote and event they will have some kind of Windows 10 or software demo, and usually in the past it was Joe Belfiore, and then in some cases it was Brian Roper. But then obviously every now and then you'd also have Terry Myerson do one, and Satya Nadella would also do one. So I wonder if Joe Belfiore will be making a return to do his demos like he used to.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm also not sure if that was Brian's full-time job at Microsoft, or exactly. I mean, I know he went and did other events too that were smaller, more private for developers and everything. But it's a shame, because he was. It's a shame when Microsoft puts people out there to be sort of the public face of this stuff, and they kind of catch on. And I would say he was. And I remember a lot of people who weren't even part of the Windows community, the Windows sites that were reporting on this, made note of him and how kind of infectious his presentation is and how fun he was. And it's a shame, you never want to see someone lose their job. And, Microsoft's it's part of the business, but that doesn't, make it any easier for these people who dedicate their lives to these companies, and then that happens. It makes me kind of thankful because we talked about this before, like, would you ever go work for Microsoft? And it's like, I don't really like that environment. Now we don't know that many of these people they get performance reviews and all this, and they sometimes things get cut, so there are reasons for it, but it's just I don't know. Everybody wants a little job security in life, and you get a job you like. It kind of stinks when it happens. So, best of luck to Brian. And he's one of those guys. He's very charming, and I'm sure he'll land on his feet. And being in the Seattle Redmond area, there's a lot going on there for tech right now. There's a lot of tech companies coming up from the coast, from San Francisco. So there's a lot of opportunities there. Amazon is massive. They keep growing. So. Hopefully, him and the rest who were unfortunately lost their jobs this week will find something new. But
right, yeah, Microsoft over the last year or so have been laying off quite a few people. There was a huge layoff. I can't remember now. I think it was about a year ago at this point, maybe a bit longer. They laid off I think it was 15,000 or something. I can't remember. I might be talking.
Yeah, I forgot the number. Yeah, they've done these waves, right? Yeah, there's 7,500 for a while.
And I mean, companies will do this every so often. They will lay off a few people, hire on a few more people. It's just what companies do, and it is upsetting.
The Nokia thing was probably the worst. Yeah. I mean, and that was just really just not pleasant to watch. I knew a lot of those people, and you have to give the Nokia company and the people who work for them credit. They were some of the most dedicated, hardcore people who were just really in touch with the community, very passionate about what they were doing, and they got sucked into this corporate monster. A lot of them relocated, and then months later, it was just okay, now we're just going to get rid of you guys. It was just very. And that's just, that's change of leadership. That was the difference between Ballmer and Nadella. Ballmer wanted Nokia, Nadella changed and was against the idea. And this is what happens. It's just, you get a lot of human lives involved with it. It was just that whole thing was just messy.
Yeah, it really was.
And what was the point of it? It was they bought it, they made a few phones, and they ditched it. And now Nokia is, a lot of those people have gone back to the HMD, which is the new Nokia, and now they're making Android phones that look exactly like Lumia's. It's just a bizarre thing that cost billions of dollars and caused people.
Didn't Microsoft obtain a bunch of Nokia's patents through the acquisition?
I don't think they got the patents to keep. I think they got the patents to use. But now that I don't know if that stuff shifted back. I think some of this stuff like Glance Screen was covered in that, which is possibly one of the reasons why we don't see Glance on other devices, the Elite X3, for instance. I don't know if Microsoft had the right to license that to other companies. I think they had the right to use it, but I don't know if they had the right to give it out. I'm not really sure how all that stuff is and who owns what, but I know there's some complications there.
Panos Panay just tweeted. He tweeted the @ symbol and then hashtag. Cryptic messages. It's Surface Phone confirmed. Anyway,
Surface Phone.
Moving on, because I think that's pretty much that story. Yeah, so very unfortunate to see lots of people being laid off. It's always upsetting. But moving right along, MacBook Pro. Yes, we're now the iMore podcast, and we're going to be talking about Apple stuff. So go ahead, Dan.
I picked up a MacBook Pro a couple of weeks ago because I love Apple. Now, I'm actually, of all the tech companies, I do admire a lot of what Apple does. And I still think, and will still say this, they set the standard for hardware. Now, Microsoft has done a very good job with Surface. I think with every Surface release that comes out, they get better. But Apple still has this whole production thing down. Now, the new MacBook Pro is a very controversial device, both the 13 and 15 inch, of course. They ditched USB Type A, what's known as the kind of legacy USB that we're used to. And they put on like 4 USB Type C ports, which is like just going to the other extreme. Now, I'm all fine for USB Type C, even putting on a bunch of ports, but I still think devices should have just one USB Type A. Just keep the old port there, just for that couple of years where you kind of need it. It's convenience. I don't see why they couldn't do it. They also did this thing with the Touch Bar, which is this LED bar that sits on top, and what they ended up doing was getting rid of the function key row. And what's neat about it, it's dynamic, right? So how it works in OS X is each app, and developers have access to this, where you open it, that bar can change to give you tools for that specific app. And it's kind of a neat idea. It's an idea that Microsoft themselves have experimented with. It's not very usable. What Microsoft has found out, of course, is that you see something on the screen, you want to manipulate it, you should be able to just reach out and touch it and manipulate it. That's why they've gone with touch screens. And if you look at how a touch bar works, you have to basically look at the screen to look down your keyboard and then put your hand over the keyboard to touch these little things. It's kind of a usability nightmare. I don't mind it, but I don't love it either. The keyboard is also strange because it has this what's called a butterfly mechanism, and it's very shallow. So it's funny, when we do laptop reviews, we generally review the key travel. 1.3 millimeter is like, common, and then you go up to 1.5, and something crazy goes to 2 millimeter, which is strange on a keyboard. And like Apple went in this opposite direction. Like this thing has got like almost no travel, so it bottoms out very quickly. So you press down the key, and it's like you're immediately hitting the bottom of it. I don't hate this keyboard. I read so much about it and watched reviews, and people were just like, oh, it's terrible. I actually got used to it very quickly, but I get why a lot of people won't like it. It feels very strange. It's just like the Razer Blade Pro keyboard, which just feels strange when you first use it, but you get used to it. But I'll say the build quality of this thing is fantastic. Now, my question is not necessarily, okay, how does it run OS X? Because I don't use OS X. I've used it in the past, but every time I pick it up now, it's just like me picking up Linux. I look at it, I'm like, I don't know how to do anything. And I just don't like the way OS X looks. It's too cartoonish for me. So what I did was, as a good Microsoft fan, I put on Windows 10. And what I did, and we'll have a video this week, this week coming up, that is for February 1st week, where I talk about my experience of putting Windows 10 on this thing. And it's actually pretty good. It's like 80% good, I would say. And this is important because if you buy a MacBook Pro and you're using OS X, it's a very simple process to go and put Windows 10 on this for free. You don't even need to buy the license for Windows 10. You can totally use it unlicensed. It'll have a little thing that says, unactivated and all this, and you can't change to dark mode or change the wallpaper. But you can totally use it otherwise. You can install apps, you can download programs, you can just run it, and nothing will happen, nothing will expire, the thing won't shut off. And you can do that all for free.
It will eventually. It will start doing it eventually if you leave it unactivated for long enough.
I've had it now for like a month, and it's done nothing.
Oh, I don't know then. Maybe it's 6 days.
And what you can do as well is you can enroll in the Insider program and put Release Preview on there, and that actually gets rid of the watermark.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
Oh, I guess
it does. Yeah, it still will say unactivated in settings,
Mm,
and that there's no license. You still can't change things, but it gets rid of that watermark, which is kind of interesting.
right.
Um, so what I'm saying is like if you're just in the because the problem is it's like someone like Mr. Mobile, a good friend of our site here. Um, he's just tied into the Mac and Apple OS ecosystem, and it's totally understandable. You invest a lot of money in it, the apps and all this kind of stuff. So for him switching to a pure Windows 10 machine or going and buying one, it's kind of like a big deal. But someone like him or other people can easily put Windows 10 on their machine, dual boot into it using uh, Apple's Boot Camp app, and just run Windows 10. And it's a really neat experience. It's just Windows 10. Now, you guys may have some questions, and that's what I talk about in specifically in this video. It's like, okay, so how does the touch bar work in Windows 10? Does the Touch ID, aka its fingerprint sensor, work? How is the trackpad? And all that other kind of stuff. And so this is what I talk about in the video. But basically, the touch bar works, and it's just not dynamic. So it won't change for any specific apps. But what it does do is it gives you volume controls, display brightness controls, keyboard brightness controls like mute and play, pause, and that kind of stuff. And it works pretty well, actually. It's actually funny because it's actually better on Windows 10 than in Mac OS. Mac OS, when you want to change the volume, it's just one volume key. So you tap it and then it expands into like a slider, which looks cool, but you just realize that's like a couple steps now just to change the volume. Whereas this just has volume up, volume down, and mute. So it's more direct. Fingerprint scanner does not work, and that's unfortunate. Now, there's no technical reason why it can't work with Windows Hello. It's just Apple never made the driver for it. They could. I don't think they will. It would be nice if they did, but I don't think they're going to vote any developers to make that happen.
Do you reckon they haven't because of security reasons? Because if you build a driver for Windows, then that kind of opens it up to this typical Windows sort of thingies. I don't know.
I don't think so. No. I mean, any fingerprint reader right now plugs into Windows and kind of works. They're kind of generic. Apple just has their own unique thing, and I think they just didn't enable any kind of driver because Boot Camp installs its own drivers for the display and everything else, for the trackpad, all these things to be recognized, the touch bar, and I don't think they just linked the two up. I obviously it gets a little technical, but I'm not 100% sure how it would work there. But yeah. So that doesn't work. It's unfortunate. Maybe they'll turn it on at some point, but Windows Hello just says your device doesn't have anything.
So would you say buying a MacBook for Windows 10 is a good idea?
No. And what's funny is a couple of years ago, I would hedge a little bit on that because I've run a MacBook Pro 15 with Windows 10. It was actually a really good experience. What's kind of neat about the MacBooks is, and one reason I do like them is the display, the orientation is 16 by 10 and not 16 by 9. It's not quite 3 by 2, what the Surface Book uses, but it still is taller. And I think it looks better. And because they don't have a touch screen, they make really nice thin displays that just look really gorgeous. And not everybody cares about a touchscreen. I actually do not care about having a touchscreen on a laptop. I just don't. Sorry. So that doesn't bother me at all. I realize it bothers some, but the display looks really, really good on this. It's super high resolution, and so that's why I used to be able to kind of recommend it. Even the trackpad was kind of nice. Now, so this has a Force Touch trackpad. It works in the sense where it clicks, it registers clicks. You can even do the right click on there, which Macs typically don't have, but it does have a right click zone. I talked about using a third-party app called Trackpad Plus Plus, which is a free app, and it actually gives you Windows 10 gestures back, which is really nice. It works mostly well. But what's funny is between Precision touchpads and Synaptics getting really good recently, I can honestly say that there are Windows laptops that are better than this. There's also the cost, right? This is the most obvious. You can go buy the HP Spectre X360 for like $500 or $600 cheaper, and you're going to get a better machine. Better keyboard, better trackpad. You're going to get Windows Hello login. You're going to get a touchscreen. It turns into a tablet. It's just everything about this is better. If you want the higher resolution screen, go get a Dell XPS 13, right? With that thing. So there are just much better Windows options today, and that's an awesome thing to be able to say. It's that these companies have really caught up. Even my Razer Blade 14-inch is still one of my favorite laptops. I would recommend that. I get it though. I pick up this MacBook. There's a 13-inch, by the way, that has it's the high end one. It costs like 2,000. I pick it up. I love kind of using it, but I couldn't definitely recommend going and buying it. It just seems insane to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different story because my take on the Apple stuff this week was that I started using an iPhone over my Windows phone purely as a Microsoft user to see if it was possible to, live with an iPhone in a Microsoft ecosystem. And unlike on the MacBook, where buying a MacBook wouldn't really make sense if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem because there's so many other great options that natively support Windows 10, like the Surface Book and the Razer Blade and whatnot and so forth. Windows Phone users aren't exactly in the same boat because we all know Windows 10 Mobile and Windows Phone isn't exactly popular. It's a little bit buggy. There's not really many apps, not many devices that actually sell with Windows 10 Mobile. So I get this question a lot on social media and whatnot. Is it easy for a Windows Phone user or somebody in the Microsoft ecosystem entirely to switch to an iPhone or an Android device? Now, I've taken on the iPhone stance first. I may cover the Android stance in the future. I've seen a few people request it on the iPhone article. But for now, I've only looked at the iPhone side of things. And I've been using it for about a week and a half, just purely with Microsoft's soft apps and services and stuff. And I say it's definitely doable. Now, Apple makes this easier. With iOS 10, Apple has actually allowed a number of these stock apps to be removed. So the Mail app, the Calendar, Apple Music, basically all the Apple rubbish, as I referred to it in the article, you can remove. And that makes it much more easier to just replace all the apps with Microsoft stuff. And Microsoft does have a lot of apps on iOS. Microsoft is definitely a software company first, and it shows on iOS. Microsoft is so dedicated to iOS and Android, I'd say. It's almost unprecedented. You don't see Apple or Google, or maybe Google does. Google has some nice apps on iOS, but you don't see Apple doing this anywhere, really. The Microsoft definitely has the most sort of spread out and most concentrated apps on iOS for its own services. So the Office apps are fully featured. In fact, I'd say they're better on iOS than they are on Windows Phone. I'd also say the Outlook Mail app is pretty nice. I wouldn't say it's as good as it is on Windows Phone, but it's definitely.
I don't care for the look of the Outlook app. It functions well, but I really enjoy the Windows 10 design way better.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the apps are. Here's the thing that many people don't seem to understand. A lot of the Microsoft apps on iOS are basically on par with what Windows Phone has to offer, or in the case of Office, better. And not only that, since the iOS and the iPhone work together.
But no dark mode.
No dark mode. That's one of the problems.
Skype is white as you probably during the winter.
Oh, thanks for that. And but the iOS and iPhone 7 are super fast. So when you think of it, like you remove the Apple stuff, I turned off iMessage, FaceTime, all of the Apple rubbish, as I said, installed Outlook, I installed Groove, I installed Cortana, I installed GroupMe, Skype, Microsoft Band for health, Authenticator for security. Basically, any Microsoft app, any Microsoft app I install, this becomes a very attractive Microsoft iPhone. It's I wouldn't say it's, well, in my opinion, it's not as good as my Windows Phone because I love Windows Phone, obviously. But as somebody in the Microsoft ecosystem, you can absolutely get by with an iPhone and get by happily. And then you obviously consider that there's way more apps on iOS. It's a much faster phone. It's a much more well-built phone compared to the Lumias. It's definitely an attractive package for Microsoft fans. Now, I'm not saying Windows fans, because Windows fans are an entirely different species altogether who refuse to let Windows Phone die. And I understand you don't want to leave. I get that. But for Microsoft ecosystem users who are just on OneDrive, Office, Windows 10, any other Microsoft software or service under the sun, buying an iPhone and using it with your Microsoft services actually makes sense. You have automatic backup to OneDrive. You can download the app, set that up, and it does it in the background just like it does on Windows Phone. You've got Cortana, which does reminders. She can do voice commands and whatnot.
You can't set. Yeah, you can't set it as default though. So if you hold
Right.
down the
No.
button, it still will
And
launch
these are the
Siri.
limitations which I'm getting to now. So
Sure.
Cortana,
Yeah.
if you're somebody who is in the Microsoft ecosystem but also likes the synergy between your phone and your desktop, the iPhone isn't for you. The apps on iPhone can't do the notification syncing between devices, and the iPhone can't send SMS from your PC as well. So Android devices can do that, and so can Windows Phone, obviously. But if you're somebody who is using Skype Preview to send SMS, you can't use the Skype app on iOS to do so because Apple don't allow it. It's just not in their APIs. You can't switch out the messaging app, SMS as messaging app for another one. But if you're okay with not having that, which I am because I don't use the SMS app I don't use the Skype SMS support anyway because I think it's rubbish. And I do honestly, and the Cortana notification syncing, I usually end up turning it off because it's just annoying. My phone's usually, if I'm not on my phone, it's on my desk and I can see them coming anyway. So yeah, apart from that, they basically all work. Now there is one issue with the using Microsoft apps on iOS as your main apps over the built-in stock apps is that Apple don't yet allow you to change default apps on iOS. So if you remove the Mail app, for
Right.
example, and you tap on an email to start composing a message, the iOS will say, "Well, hang on a minute, you don't have a Mail app installed. Would you like to reinstall the default stock Mail app?" When actually, in fact, I have the Outlook app installed and I'm able to send emails with it. So the only way around that is to manually copy an email and open Outlook and begin doing it there, or for calendar events, manually create the calendar event, which is a small inconvenience and one that I can see getting annoying for those of you who are constantly, tapping email links and whatnot. But if you're somebody who only does it rarely or not as often like me, then it's perfectly fine for me. I don't mind going the extra step. But yeah, overall, I was surprisingly okay and comfortable using the iPhone with Microsoft services. I definitely felt a lot more at home once I realized you could actually uninstall things like music from Apple and iTunes Store. Like, you can give it the iTunes Store. That's a surprise to me. You would never see
Right.
that if Steve Jobs was still alive.
Yeah, I have an iPhone 7 Plus. It's on my secondary line, so I carry it around with me on occasion. It's also a little bit big, not unlike the Elite X3, so sometimes I don't like to use it. But it's a pretty good experience. If I had to, people ask me this all the time, and if I had to choose, I would go with an iPhone over Android. I also just fired up this week my Galaxy S7, which I hadn't used in weeks. And I still just do not like it. There's
Mm.
nothing about it. I love the camera and I love the hardware, but the OS experience I just do not care for. It still stutters. It still has these weird kind of glitches. I still find it super confusing. Just not a fan. I don't like Google stuff. I just find it weird. That's not to say I love everything about the iPhone either. Groove, I have some issues using my Groove Pass. Sometimes I'll go to bring up the catalog and I'll just get it just spins, nothing shows. And that's obviously a fault with Microsoft, some bugs, and they're pretty good with updating it. I see it get updated like kind of like once a week almost, once every 2 weeks to address bugs. The Cortana thing is a little frustrating because it's just an app, so
Mm.
you have to launch it, and it's obviously way easier to use Siri. And Siri's actually not terrible at all. Siri can do some pretty impressive things, and I really like the what you can almost call the neon type look to it, which is it uses a lot of
Mm.
translucency with text on it, and it looks really kind of cool. I also like how they now have. So one of the big things with the iPhone, of course, is you can't have live tiles, right? So
Right.
there's everything is static, but you do have, and I don't even know what they call it now, that drawer where you slide from the left.
Widgets.
Oh, the widgets, yeah, and
Yeah.
that you can pin stuff there. Now, you have UI inconsistencies, which is one thing that Microsoft is very good with its live tiles. Everything looks similar and follows the same rules. With widgets, it's, Wild West. Everybody can make their widget, you know, 15, spaces high or two. And so some widgets are massive, some are tiny, but still a pretty nice feature. I have my Ecobee in there. I have, the current weather and just a couple of things you can put in there. So you just slide over and you can get that info. Notifications, I would say, have gotten better too. That was one thing where they've always sort of lagged behind Android and even Microsoft. I still prefer the Action Center for Windows 10 way better than I do for the iPhone.
Mm.
But things have definitely gotten better.
Uh,
I still hate how every Skype message is its own notification.
Right, yeah. Apple doesn't do notifications well, which I was surprised to me because I remember But 5 or 6 years ago, I remember thinking, wow, iOS does notifications really well. But at the time, obviously, nobody else was doing notifications like Apple were. Since then, Windows phones, Windows to mobile at least, has come along with actionable notifications, which are great. Android now has it in Android 7. And iOS does have it. It's just, it's not as, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Notifications on iOS are somewhat confusing as well. If you get a notification on the lock screen, tapping it doesn't actually prompt you to unlock your phone. You force press it if you want to reply to it, or you just have to unlock your phone, swipe down for the notification, and then tap it to get it into the app where the notification came from. It's an odd sort of experience on iOS. So I would say notifications are its strong suit. Going back to the widgets area, Microsoft actually does a good job of supporting this area with a few of their apps. OneNote has one, which is actually really quite handy because it kind of re-adds the quick toggle that Windows to Mobile has for creating quick notes with quick access. So you can just swipe to the right or to the left, sorry, tap on Quick Note, and it just takes you straight into a new note, OneNote. And like I said, since the Office apps open so quickly on iOS, even from just cold boot, they appear to just be ready to go, and it really is an enjoyable experience, which I was surprised to see.
iOS, it's consistent. It's the performance with every app is just going to launch, and it looks the same. It never stutters. You don't get weird performance issues. It's just really good. I would still let's put Windows 10 on an iPhone. Because just like how I put Windows 10 on the MacBook Pro, it's not 100%, but like I still just, it's great hardware. I mean, it just feels really, really nice. And that's still, I think, the goal. If Microsoft can build anything quality-wise as, they do really, you say what you want with the iPhone. They haven't changed it forever. It's not exciting. I get that, but when you still pick up an iPhone, you really feel that quality there. Like it's nice. I don't care for the speakers. I know everyone makes a big deal about it, but to me they sound really mechanical and just fake. I don't know. They're loud and the quality is good, but it just still doesn't sound authentic to me. There's something weird about it. The fingerprint reader I think is really good. I got used to the new home button, which is also Force Touch now.
I actually prefer it now over the old one.
Yeah, and so I get that too. I didn't like it, but then I also have an iPhone 6 laying around, and I play with that once in a while. And yeah, it actually is more work, it feels like, to use a physical button. And I kind of like the electronic one. So they do smart things like that. I still find the camera rubbish.
It's not great. No matter what anybody
people
says.
And people who gush about an iPhone's camera just simply, don't shoot on really good cameras, or haven't tried anything else. That's all it comes down to. They're just ignorant, and I'm not pulling punches here. I really feel it's the case.
It's definitely a capable shooter, and
and I think for most people it's fine
as well. Yeah, it's very point and shoot,
and that's where it does excel. And I think that's why people give it a pass. But if you really, I think Samsung really does the best with the Galaxy. Starting with the Galaxy S6 and the S7, I think their camera is just fantastic, and LG's caught up a bit too. Even I was using the 950 this week, just because it was smaller and it was better for me at the gym, and I forget just how good that camera is now. It's just the opposite though with the 950. It's a lot slower. But God forbid if you're trying to shoot anything that's moving at nighttime, right? It's not going to happen. But when you get, when you can do the shot, the photos are so good, and it's just like I just wish you could make it faster. That's the one thing they just had to.
So the question the goal I had set out for myself with using the iPhone as with Microsoft services was, is the iPhone a good Microsoft phone? And I honestly think it is. If you are in the Microsoft ecosystem and you're looking for a phone that isn't Windows Phone, I can recommend the iPhone easily. I will definitely be doing the same experiment, I guess, with Android, and I'm pretty sure I already know the answer. It will be the same on Android, but
the problem with Android is it gets more complicated. So with the Galaxy S7, I could say like a lot of the issues I have are probably related to what Samsung has done with Android versus going with a Pixel phone, right? So it's going to depend on all that stuff, and that's where it gets complicated because HTC, LG, Samsung, they all do their own thing, and you have to sort of factor out, that from criticizing. Like Because if you go like, I used a Samsung and I didn't like the interface, people are gonna be like, well, that's Samsung, you should
Yeah,
try
right.
this. And that's what the first thing they always do. It's like, and I always tell people like, yeah, but I just spent $700 on this phone. Don't tell me that like I bought the $700 phone that everybody said was so good, and that well, I should have gone and got this one instead. It's
But
like, wow,
then
that's,
you've also got the fact that you can actually change the launchers on Android, which is also a bonus. So Microsoft actually has their own launcher and lock screen for Android, which you
yes.
can download onto any phone, any Android phone, I believe, which basically gives it Microsoft's own sort of lick of paint.
And I use those,
Yeah,
and they're still okay. It's
they're,
still
they're, they're not amazing, I'd say.
it won't fill that hole in your heart if you're a Windows 10 fan.
Right.
It's something like, and I get it, you can skin everything. This is where I always make the joke. People go, I love Android because you could
Mm,
just customize it and skin it. I'm like, I'm over 30. I don't want to do this. Like, I just want to buy a quality product and use it. Like, I get like putting Windows 10 on my MacBook. That was actually super simple. It took probably about 15 minutes, besides the actual wait for it to install. I don't want to say what happens with Android is you start downloading all of these launchers and you spend like 8 hours setting everything up only to realize I don't really like this. And then you do it all over again. And
right.
you'll never be satisfied. It's too much choice. And there's such thing as having too much choice out there. And you're always moving on and trying something. And you're just going to waste a part of your life. And when you're in your 20s and you're a dude, totally fine. That's fun. I mean, you actually learn a lot when you're in your 30s and 40s, you just want this thing to work. It's a
It's
phone. You don't want to work for it.
It's funny. I actually had a moment of peace going back to iOS because I was an iPhone user years ago and I used to hate the gridded sort of. You can't do anything with it. It's just rubbish. Then I moved to Windows Phone and you had live tiles that you could resize them and put them anywhere you wanted, and I thought that was amazing. And then I came back to iOS of iOS 10 and I just kind of had a moment of just peace where I went, I don't have to care. Any app can
Yeah.
go anywhere and it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Because I sometimes go for this with Windows Phone where I'm like, damn, like this start screen doesn't work right now. It's been working fine for 3 weeks. Now I just want to change it again, and it's a constant thing. But on iOS you don't get that because it just doesn't matter. Everything just is a grid of icons, and like you say, for some people that's exactly what they want, and for me as well, I don't mind that as long as the OS is fast, the phone does what it's supposed to do, and after like a few days, I remembered where all the apps were anyway. So just tap it and it opens,
Yeah.
and you go right ahead.
And that's one thing I can always say about, at least the iPhone is it's extremely boring
Mm-hmm.
to use. Like you can change the wallpaper and it's literally not going to be like, oh
Right.
yeah, now it's way better. Like it's like you can barely see it,
Right.
and that's also its strength because if they build in the idea here, of course, is if you build an OS that's good and it's really good, you don't want people aren't going to be like wanting to dramatically change it all the time. And of course, when you limit them and don't give them the choice to do that anyway, and I think that's why a lot of the iPhone's so popular. People can it did what Steve Jobs wanted it to do, which is you just pick it up and you run it. It's one button. There's nothing to learn. It just launches apps.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, that's not enough, and I get that too. But for the masses out there, that's why it caught on. It just wanted this thing that could run apps. You just launch it, and they don't have to think about it. Windows 10 Mobile may still have a little bit of this. Windows 10 Mobile really is in between Android and iOS, and that's what's always been fun about it. You can't put a new launcher on it, but you can customize it way more than you can in an iPhone, and that gives people that little extra freedom.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Windows 10 Mobile and Windows Phone in general just isn't adopted by more people. Because Windows Phone, honestly, if Windows Phone were done by Apple or Google or Microsoft in another parallel universe in which they were popular and whatnot, Windows Phone would be the best platform if you think about it. It's just the live tiles are amazing. The UI and I guess the Universal Windows platform is a great idea that if it was in full effect and actually popular and being used by everyone on mobile as well as desktop, it would be it would be a game changer. It really would.
You know what the issue though with the tiles is? It's when you show people who are not familiar with it, their
Hmm.
first impression a lot of times is it looks chaotic to them
Right.
and it looks crazy and they don't like it. And it's one of those until you set your own up and move tiles to where you want and what you want in there, it won't click. And that I think is the problem that they're going to have with this, and they have had in the past. Whereas the iPhone, it's so super generic. When it came out, it looked like a trio, right?
Right.
With just static background with just icons that you just tapped on. People got that. It's boring. It's not very functional, but they recognize that paradigm.
It's
Whereas
easy.
Microsoft, Yeah, and Microsoft shifted it around a little bit. I still think it's easy to understand, but it's yeah, I've seen, and you just go read comments, and some people are like, "Oh, it just looks terrible. I think it looks really messy." And like, meanwhile, the rest of us are like, "Are you kidding? It's like the best UI ever." Um, and how do you bridge that gap is the challenge.
I mean, at the end of the day, there are different phones for different people. If you can't live without live tiles, of course, you should go for a Windows phone. If you are fine with a grid of icons, but a fantastic smartphone that has great apps and whatnot, then iOS is great. If you want customization and being able to change literally everything from the icons on your dock to the size of the battery icon and whether it shows a circle or a square or whatever, then you go Android, obviously. So there's basically one for it. There's a platform for each of us. Too bad the Windows 10 mobile platform isn't as good as the other two.
Well, do you think though, I mean, this is an important thing now that Windows 10's been out for a while, it's still growing, it's probably, who knows, how many devices it's on now? 500 million, probably 600 million. I forgot the numbers.
They haven't updated in a while.
Yeah, because it's really slowed down. That's why. But, it's obviously out there more, and especially with the creators update where you can hide that app list, conceptually, it's becoming a lot more familiar now that when people see that, then I think what's going to happen to some people is, someday if a Surface phone comes out, people are going to go like, oh, hey, that phone looks like my computer. And, and I think that's what they want to go for is this idea. It's like, that's how people are going to get re-familiar with how the start screen works on mobile. Whereas they didn't really have that before. They had a little bit with Windows 8, but Windows 8 wasn't very popular. So it kind of worked in reverse. But yeah, well, just I guess wait and see.
Yeah, composable shells and whatnot will help out with that as well, I think. But yeah, that was my tale of the iPhone. I've had a few people ask me, will I be sticking with the iPhone? For now, yeah, but only because I'm too lazy to set up my Windows Phone again. So I'm going to be just hanging out with the iPhone for a little while longer. But then I definitely want to go back to the Windows Phone because Windows Phone is my baby and I love Windows Phone to bits. But yeah, that's basically me.
Sounds good. Well, I think we're all set for this podcast. We're hitting an hour right now. For next week on the site, if you're listening to this live, check out, we'll have a few reviews. I think I'm even going to have my XPS Tower review, which I haven't done much with desktops except for the Surface Studio. But this is a XPS Tower Special Edition. It supports VR. It has, I believe, a 1070 GTX video card in it. But it's also very affordable. Like all Dell stuff, you can get it with a Core i5 and 8 gigs of RAM and still come out with not dropping a whole lot. So I'll be taking a look at that. And yeah, I'll also be traveling a little bit to New York City next week. And we have a couple of things. Zach, what are you working on? Any big scoops?
I don't know yet. I'm looking into a few things regarding Cloud Shell, which was a thing that wasn't reported on this week. Different from Seashell. I've heard a couple things, still looking into it, so I might have something next week. But apart from that, I don't even know. I can't remember. It feels like years ago that we did that weekly call, so I don't remember. But yeah, I have a few things in the works, so stay tuned at Windows Central for that.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for tuning in live. Now we're going to do some questions and answers, but it's only for the live podcast, so you guys will have to just tune in next time for that. We do record this on Fridays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for those listening to this syndication. And you can also join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern time where we do Microsoft Gaming and Libations, where me, Zach, and our Xbox chief, Jez Corden, play some latest video game. This week we did Halo Wars 2, which was kind of hit and miss. Still in beta, and hopefully this week we'll be doing something else too. So join in for that. Much more laid back, relaxed, and we also tend to give away stuff like free games. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you next week.